Hey folks, it's Steve. I hope that you've been enjoying all the DCL content and the different things that we've been bringing to you lately. We are going to turn our focus on a couple episodes coming up to some different cruise lines. Obviously, sometimes it just does not work to travel at DCL. And to be completely honest, it's fun to get out there and try some different experiences. And as you will see in this show, which Chris does an amazing job doing, there are a lot of things that maybe DCL could learn from some of the other cruise lines to make it better. And then there are ways where DCL just shines and is a standout compared to some of the other cruise lines as well. But it's always fun to hear about the different cruise lines that are out there and the different experiences that you, our listeners, can have. And I really want to thank Chris for coming on and sharing his experiences. So as they say, on with the show. Let's take a look at Royal Caribbean's Navigator of the Seas. Enjoy the show, everybody. Well, hello, and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you cruise a little smarter. And this is Nova Bright, and I'm joined here today with Christy. Hi, Christy. How are things going over on the East Coast?
Hi, it's been a minute since you and I have seen each other face to face and had a podcast chat. I'm excited to be here with you.
I know, I've been so busy at work and then things just slip by, but so much has happened since we last saw each other. We signed adoption papers. We're now the presumed adoptive parents of a 15-year-old. It still has to go through like a finalization date, but that's just basically symbolic in court where everything becomes final. But
oh my God. That's amazing. And 15, how did that happen? Because a minute ago he was 13 and I don't know that 2 years have passed since then. So I'm not okay with that.
No, really. I think it'll be January, 2 years in January. It feels wild, but we haven't looked back. We keep going. We haven't recorded our Europe episode to talk about my trip to Europe this summer, but we will. It'll be like a surprise episode that just comes out. But we're here today with one of our favorite people who has not been on our show before, at least not in the main feed, in the Patreon feed. But I'm so excited to introduce everyone in the main feed to Chris Kidder. Hi, Chris.
Hello. Hi. Hello. Great to see you guys. Great to talk with you both.
Yeah, I'm super excited because I know that you, in fact, last time we hung out at Disneyland, you were saying that you really like Royal Caribbean, that you've done some Royal Caribbean stuff. And I feel like you and I were geeking out over the intro campaign that they did for Icon of the Seas, because it's it's textbook what every cruise line should be doing to hype their new ships. It's
giving information.
Yes,
what a concept.
It's a very good campaign, and it makes me want to think about sailing on Royal. And so I'm super excited to hear more about your experience. So we're going to do a little trip report from a Royal Caribbean cruise that you took, and then we'll do some fun comparisons just to see how is it different from what DCL folks are used to. So that's what's on the docket today. I'm excited. What about you, Christy?
That sounds awesome. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
I'm excited too. And Chris is one of our favorite new friends, I think, new podcast friends. So Chris hung out with us when we were all in Disneyland in June, which it's hard to believe that it was that many months ago. 4 months ago.
Yeah.
What happens to time? Can we just talk about that for a second? But yeah, Nova went to Europe. We never talk about any of that. And it's been 4 months since our couple of days at Disneyland together was a blast. And I think both of our kids, Nova, think that Chris should be a part of our families now, which I think is just amazing.
Chris, you don't have any kids, right, Chris?
I have no kid. I have a niece and a nephew, so I am I love families and all of that. So
you give you're giving fun uncle vibes to our kids for sure.
For sure.
I have the fun uncle T-shirt that I wore to the theme parks with my niece and nephew. Yeah,
I love that. I love that. Well, yeah. So we had a blast painting Disneyland red, and then we we have since then just kept in contact. And when we heard about this Royal cruise, we were like, you know what? We should like do a little comparison and just see how it goes. So why don't we do like more of a traditional trip report first, and then we'll end it with some comparison thoughts.
Or it can like even be
dispersed. I like that. Okay, so we'll disperse your thoughts.
Yeah.
So the first thing we'll do is just an intro on what the cruise was, how you came about going on this particular cruise, and all of that. So why don't you tell us what was the cruise and how did you go about being on it?
Yeah, so I went on a 4-night Royal Caribbean Navigator of the Seas cruise. It left out of the Port of Los Angeles, which is in San Pedro, California. This cruise, Royal Caribbean does 3, 4, and 7-night cruises primarily out of Los Angeles. The 3 and 4 nights typically just go to either Catalina and Ensenada or some combination of those. And then the 7-night go all the way down the Mexican Riviera, similar to how Disney's out of San Diego, where they go to Puerto Vallarta, Mazatlan, and Cabo. This cruise was a little bit kind of crazy. I'd been wanting to go on a Disney cruise during the summer, just couldn't make the schedules work. And then I saw a cruise at the, essentially Labor Day week, leaving out of LA on Royal Caribbean. I wanted to try Royal Caribbean out because in about 3 or 4 months, I'm going to be sailing on their kind of world's largest brand new ship, Icon of the Seas, with a ton of friends on the maiden voyage. So I wanted to get a feel for what is Royal Caribbean like? What's the food like? What are the activities like? What's the room like? What's the kind of cruise ship like? What that experience is. And so I thought this would be a good entry point into that. I booked the cruise, super easy to book. You just hop on the website, like great technology in terms of booking the cruise itself, and had that all locked down. And then of course, COVID sadly finally hit me for the first time after 3.5 years. So luckily I had travel insurance with the credit card that I used to book this cruise. So that allowed me to essentially recoup the cost of the cruise and put it towards, the new cruise that I went on. Essentially, I was able to just move the cruise essentially like 3 weeks and hop on the ship then. So that isn't always the case with how, crowded cruises are, but luckily there was a decent amount of availability in September once, schools are back in session and whatnot. So yeah, I hopped on the ship end of September and was so excited to get on.
Because I'm a just general geek when it comes to cruise ships, I am a little familiar with Royal's fleet. So if I were to ask you, is the Navigator of the Seas an Oasis class ship? No.
So the Navigator of the Seas it's 140,000 gross tons.
So the same size as the Fantasy.
Of like the Dream and the Fantasy. It has a capacity of 4,000 people. We had just under 3,700 on our sailing, so roughly 92% full. The ship obviously is much larger than the Magic and the Wonder, but not nearly as big as, the Oasis class are 220,000 to 250,000 gross tons and can get 6,000 plus people. So this was a very manageable ship. It had 15 decks, a very manageable ship in terms of like Royal Caribbean's kind of fleet. I would say it's pretty much in the middle of the pack for them. And I think a really good sort of starter entry cruise if you want to check out a cruise line, a different cruise line than Disney.
I like that their pool deck has some slides, but they're not like the intense slides that are on the Oasis class. They have more of like a younger kid or like kid-sized slides in the middle and like a little splash pad, right? They have a little play place like that in the middle. And then they'll have like, I think even a bigger slide somewhere, but still manageable. Like the Oasis, there's some crazy big, like multiple deck slides, which is a whole different realm.
Yeah, Navigator of the Seas actually went through an amplification, which is their word for we put it into dry dock and spent like $100 million to redo the ship. The ship's, a little bit over 20 years old. It was built back in 2002. And so back right before COVID, at the end of 2019, they updated a lot of the public spaces, the restaurants, the bars, the clubs. They did nothing to the rooms or any of the guest area, your staterooms and hallways. But they also focused a lot on the pool deck itself. So they added multiple water slides. They've got a flow rider now on this ship. They redid the whole pool area. They added their super popular lime and coconut bar out there. So it really gives families a lot of choice on that pool deck. And it's very well spread out between sort of the front, the middle, and the back of the ship. So they did a very good job of kind of planning out where all of this, is. It actually has like one of the longest water coasters at sea. It's like 800 feet long, sort of like the Crush and Gusher. I think I went on the water slide, both of the water slides, I think probably more than 30 or 40 times. I mean, it was just so much fun.
Wow.
The lines were basically non-existent, which was great. So as long as it took you to climb up to the top of the tower, I went on those water slides a bunch.
What was the weather like on your cruise?
So end of September turned out to be just pretty much perfect weather the entire cruise. I mean, obviously with the cruise ship, you can, drive the ship anywhere where you can find sunshine. And so that's what the captain did both of the sea days, is he found calm ocean and found sunny skies and just would park the ship and just let it sit there all day. And so I think they said it was like low to mid 70s. And it was pretty much sunshine the entire time. Having been on several, Pacific Coast cruises where the ocean can get a bit rocky, this was probably one of the smoothest I've been on. I had a cabin at the very back of the ship, and I barely felt the ship moving, most of the 4 days.
And I don't think we've talked about it. Who went on this cruise with you?
I went all by myself, and me and my 3,700 new friends that I met on the ship. I'm a fairly outgoing person, and
yes, you are.
I love to travel. I've done a lot of solo travel with work. I'm fairly comfortable kind of traveling around the world and doing that. And so super short, it's hard to get friends to take an entire week off and spend money and do kind of a middle of September cruise, Monday through Friday cruise. So I said, you know what, the next cruise I'm going on Icon of the Seas, I've got a bunch of friends that I'm going with, which will be a lot of fun. But I just needed a nice kind of fun vacation, a quick getaway. So that was me. Yeah. How did
dining work by yourself on the cruise?
Yeah. So dining. So I did something kind of different on this cruise that I don't know that I would choose to do it in the future again, but I got their unlimited dining plan. So that was essentially $195, and it allowed me to have dinner every night in a specialty restaurant. It allowed me to have lunch on the sea days in the specialty restaurant, and then that also included a $20 credit every day to either the Johnny Rockets that they have on board that's up on their pool deck, or to Playmakers, which is their sports bar. So there was only really, that there was one time on one of the meals that I was still a bit hungry afterwards, that I ended up going to the main dining room for like a second dinner. And I just got seated at a 2-person table next to a bunch of other 2-person tables. So, but basically, when I went to all the specialty restaurants, I would just get sat at a 2-person table, but most of them were next to other families or couples that were traveling. So it was almost like, I would just end up talking with them all night. So it was almost like going with friends to dinner every night, but yeah, you're sitting at your own little 2-person table.
What about then your cabin? What type of cabin did you book for a solo cruise adventure?
So when I originally booked this cruise, I found this incredible deal. There was a guarantee rate on a suite that essentially was kind of bonkers at how, low in price it was. And sadly, had to give up that room. They ended up giving me like a grand suite, which is like their second level suite, kind of similar to maybe like a Disney 1-bedroom, a little bit smaller than a Disney 1-bedroom concierge room. But so sadly, that amazing deal was not available on this cruise that I took. So I just got your standard balcony room, although it was in the aft of the ship. And so similar to a lot of, Disney Cruise Line rooms where you have that extended veranda, I had kind of the same stateroom. It's about 180 square feet. I feel like nothing inside the stateroom has been updated in 20 years, but the veranda itself had, the size of it, it had 2 lounge chairs, sun loungers, plus a table and 2 chairs to sit at. And there was plenty of room to walk around in. I mean, you could probably host 15 people out on that balcony. And it just happened to be that there were only a couple rooms left when I rebooked, and this was one of them. And so I was able to grab it, and it was actually, at a cheaper price even than the original cruise that I booked. So
I would be probably a little disappointed if they had if they spent all that money and didn't update the rooms. But that's because I don't know. I like it when everything's new.
Yeah, it was very weird walking through the ship. The juxtaposition of like brand new spaces, modern dining and bar spaces and lounges. And then you go into the hallway and it's these like peaches and cream that remind me of walking down a hospital corridor. And they're from the 90s and they have all this weird art and like artifacts in these like display cases. And then you get to your room and you literally can see the wear and tear on this room. My bathroom door literally fell off the hinge during the cruise. And I told, obviously, my stateroom attendant about it. No one ever came to fix that, which is kind of crazy. Luckily, the door shut, but I was like, I think someone should like come and fix this, please. It's kind of baffling that they just did not update the rooms. I mean, there are 2 standard plugs in that room. If you're a family of 3 or 4 and you've got phones and computers and iPads and all stuff, watches that you need to charge, you need to bring something else with you. I had sort of a tower surge protector thing that has 4 USB ports and 8 plugs in it that I brought on the ship. So that handled all my electronic needs. But I mean, the bed was probably the worst cruise ship bed I have ever slept in. On night 1, I found that underneath the bed, they had a bunch of extra pillows and duvets under there. And so I took actually the duvets out and laid them on top of the bed to create like a pillow top mattress feel, because it was like horrifically hard and just not comfortable. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to sleep in here. Luckily, the like 2 duvets that I put over the bed helped me sleep better. But they really need to go back and redo these rooms.
That's so disappointing, because the literal second best thing about cruising, besides not having to like do dishes and cook and like manage your home, is getting the best type of sleep. Like, beds on a cruise ship should be the best bed, and it should rock you to sleep every night. So having to be in a bed that's like meh,
rocking the rock.
Yeah, that's not like, that should be included in the amplification, Chris.
Yes, I completely agree.
When I was on the Independence of the Seas over Thanksgiving a few years ago, like during COVID times, I think I actually sent pictures of how they tried to put, because the room was the same, hadn't been touched. It was god awful. And how they tried to put a sleeper pad on our mattress. And it was like half one way, half over on top of another one. And it was like, what? I actually like brought the manager of the floor in, and I was just like, could you look at this? Like, what do you think? And she's like, oh no, no. Like, no. So, and also everybody, if you all could see Nova's face during Chris telling his story about the cabin, her face was gold during all of that story. So I wish that so we record in Zoom where we can see each other's faces, but you all can't. And I really wish you could have seen that face.
It's just disappointing, because I think I've become that person who like would not cruise. I probably wouldn't cruise on this ship just based on what you're saying about the bed. But
yeah, and that's what's so crazy is like my parents just went on Ovation of the Seas. They did a 7-night Alaska cruise. They raved about the bed. They said they got the best sleep ever. Obviously, we've all been on pretty much every Disney ship. I don't think I've ever had a bad bed on a Disney ship. Like, those are literally some of the most comfortable beds. I mean, even the beds in most of their hotel rooms are unbelievable. It's crazy that something as easy as replacing a mattress I feel like it literally is probably the same mattress from 2002 when the ship came out. Literally the worst experience.
That's awful. But also, so their sister company, or like rather Royal Caribbean is the parent company of a lot of things, right? Like Celebrity,
yep.
And then there's like their boutique. Silver Seas, yeah. But anyways, I just sailed Celebrity in the Med, and that mattress was immaculate. Like that was like, and I know Celebrity is their premium brand or whatever.
But it was also a newer ship. And so I'm trying to think back to some older, but I still think it's better.
The Magic, Christy, the Magic is from the 90s.
No,
and
I know.
And they replace those mattresses all the time. Like even I feel like we were talking on this podcast about how the servers were saying that they load on new mattresses just like every time they return to port so that they can slowly change out the mattresses just on like a 5-year cycle, which I'm like, that's what you should do. If those mattresses are being slept in by strangers every night, yeah, let's change them out a little more often.
Yeah.
That's my vibe. But anyway.
And I was just on the Wish, and God, those beds are like the very best beds ever. I want to take that bedding and I want to take that bed, and Dave and I were joking. We actually just put it in our snippet, but we were like, do you think they would notice if we just like, if I wrapped this comforter around me and carried it out, like, do you think they would notice? And if we just took this mattress? I mean, it's so comfortable. You just like fall into it. But Virgin Voyages is a pretty good cruise line, and their beds are god awful as well. I mean, they're not disgusting, but they are like sleeping on
futon, right? That's the whole vibe is that you can convert the mattresses during the day into like a chaise lounger and a couch, and that's like, no, I want my mattress just to be a mattress. I want it to be a very specialized mattress.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to try when we sail on Icon of the Seas to see if the beds are better. Now, I'm in a family infinite ocean view room, which is like larger than some of their suites because there's like a bunk bed area and then a normal room. They've got the split bathroom like Disney, which I'm super excited about. I'm going to sleep in the bunk bed area, so I'm super excited to see how comfortable that is. My friends Peter and Kitra from Ordinary Adventures are going to be in the normal part of the room. So hopefully that bed is like, if it's just a little bit better than this Navigator of the Seas bed, I will be super happy.
They'll also probably let you sample their bed just to compare and see like how like different the mattress is. Yeah. But like, that's where I'm like, I'm sure it'll be better. The Icon is being hyped. Also, I bet for the Maiden, they'll do some like special. I mean, I'm not that they can change the mattresses, but I'm sure they'll do like, they'll go all out for a maiden voyage on that ship. So that'll be so much fun. We have to have you back on to talk about that.
For sure.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah.
You did mention dining, and I think that's a key thing we can start comparing and contrasting here. So you were saying, I got the specialty dining. I could go to a bunch of different places each night. Very different than Disney. A lot of the other cruise lines will bring name brand, like shoreside things on their ships. Like Norwegian does Starbucks. So you can like get your normal Starbucks drinks on a Norwegian ship. Royal
has Starbucks though as well on their Oasis class ships.
Okay. And they also do Johnny Rockets, like the first Johnny Rockets at sea. So if you're like used to American Diner, Johnny Rockets food, that's like a comfort food you could grab there. But unlike Disney, they have 10 specialty restaurants, even on the Navigator of the Seas, right? There's a ton of specialty restaurants.
There were four that you would get for dinner. Yeah.
Okay. And then upcharge restaurants would be like Johnny Rockets, the sports bar.
Yeah. And then Starbucks. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, even there, that's a very different model than Disney, because it's like the upcharge restaurants on a Disney cruise are just the adults only restaurants. And then everything else is sort of included. So you paid the extra price. You got to eat at the better restaurants. Can you tell us what types of food they serve in their specialty restaurants, and how would you compare it to specialty restaurants on Disney?
I tried all 4 specialty restaurants. They have a steakhouse called Chops. I had that for dinner. I thought that was fantastic. I mean, you're getting your standard, kind of shrimp cocktail, goat cheese salad, filet. I mean, 4.5 out of 5 there. I mean, I typically get the filet at Palo and absolutely love that for dinner. Great steak. One very interesting thing, and it was kind of a shock on night one. I walked into the steakhouse, got sat down by some great people. The couple next to me actually ended up being on Royal Caribbean's version of Match Your Mate. They had been married 62 years and were just the funniest couple in the world. But there was a large family that was there that you can bring children into these dining establishments. So there was a 4-year-old sort of just running around most of the night. Luckily, they were off by themselves in kind of another room, but very different dining experience than on your sort of 18 and over if you're at Palo or Enchante. The second night, I ate at Hooked, which is their seafood restaurant. Filet and lobster, fantastic. Another 4 out of 5 meal. None of these meals, I think if I looked overall at all the specialty, none of them really hit that Palo or Enchante kind of 5 out of 5 level, but most of them, were for the most part like a 4 out of 5, really good service. One thing I noticed, after going a couple nights is these restaurants weren't full. I think most people, it was a shorter cruise. It was only 4 nights. Most people went to the main dining room. There wasn't a lot, it was very easy. You don't actually make the reservations for these restaurants until you get on the ship if you buy the unlimited dining package. And so I was a little nervous, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to get the restaurants I want at the times I want? Easiest thing in the world. You just hop on the ship, you go straight to one of the restaurants, and then you can make all your reservations. So seafood was great. The third night I ate at their sushi restaurant called Izumi. Probably the worst experience out of the 4. We had I sat again with this wonderful couple that I met actually while I was in Ensenada. We met at a taco stand that we went to. The server was just super kind of weird that night. We would barely be finished eating a piece of sushi, and that'd be your last piece of sushi, and he was right there in to grab your plate, grab your chopstick, and I'm like, can we just chill for a minute? I actually told him can you just hang out for a little bit, just let us breathe and kind of finish our food before you're swooping in. The food was fine, but I mean, obviously being in LA, we've got amazing sushi restaurants. That was probably a 3 out of 5. Just the food, the portion size wasn't great and the food wasn't spectacular. I was sort of expecting something, I think, a bit more elevated and better than what I got. That was actually the night that I decided to go to the main dining room. I had signed up for my time dining, so I could just show up anytime between 6:30 and 9 o'clock for dinner. And so I showed up at 8:50 and had a second dinner on Caribbean night there. So that made up for kind of the food that I just didn't love.
How did you feel the food then in the main dining room compared to Disney's main dining room meal?
Yeah. So the food, and I only had one dinner in the main dining room. It was their Caribbean night. So maybe think pirate night. I don't want to say pirate night because that's probably the lowest level of Disney quality food that everyone thinks of when they think of main dining. But Caribbean jerk chicken, coconut shrimp. I had carrot cake. I needed to go test the carrot cake to see if it was any good. I thought it was actually really good. The service, now maybe it was because it's the end of the night. The food came out super fresh, piping hot. I got the food literally within 5 minutes of sitting down. All the food came out, which was great. I can see why, and for Icon of the Seas, I don't think I'm going to do the unlimited dining plan. I'll probably only try a couple of the restaurants. I think the main dining room food, at least my one night of experiencing it, was actually really good. I think on any Disney cruise ship, I think everyone has their opinions of what's good and what's bad. You have nights that are better, kind of hits and misses. I think this, I don't think it's quite Disney, but I think it's very, very close. Especially thinking back to when I was on Norwegian Cruise Line on a similar, itinerary going down to the Mexican Riviera. I ate in their main dining room twice and regretted going to the main dining room those nights. Their food was awful. and the presentation was bad. It was just bad overall. So I'm really excited to try out all of their kind of themed menus when I get on Icon.
I agree about Norwegian's main dining. I mean, I've only done it once, and we're doing it again next year. Steve and I are going on an Alaskan cruise on Norwegian, so we'll see how that food is. But
do all specialty dining, and you'll be
specialty dining's good. Yeah, we did. Seth and I did like a couple, just us dinner at the steakhouse on Norwegian. It was pretty good. I feel like steakhouse, though, it's kind of hard to miss, but maybe it's because Disney has such limited options for adult dining, like Palo or Remy, or just Palo if you're on the Dream or the Magic or the Wonder. Maybe it's that, but I feel like every time I go to Palo, I feel like the most important person on the ship. I feel like they're just so attentive to you, and they really try to do that experience, even when they bring you the little limoncello shot and the whole thing. It's like a meal experience, which I think other cruise lines are like, we have four specialty dining. So wait, you said you did sushi. Was there a fourth one that you tried?
Yeah, so the fourth one, the fourth evening was Jamie's Italian. So I had really been looking forward to this. So I did not only Jamie's for dinner, but I also did it for lunch. And then I did Hooked for lunch as well. Both of them have fantastic lunch menus that are pretty similar to their dinner menu. Jamie's, their lasagna was probably the 5 out of 5, like, best lasagna I have had. Definitely on a cruise ship, even close to being on land. I mean, that meal was absolutely fantastic. I would go back and have that meal again. Their chicken parm, I had the chicken parm at lunch. Like, not great. Wasn't the best chicken parm. It was perfectly fine, but wasn't really the best meal that I had. So I think, like, when you look overall at those specialty restaurants, I think all of there were standouts in each one of them. I think overall, when you look at the entire dining experience, and you were talking about service, I felt like I was just walking into a normal restaurant and I met a waiter or a waitress. They served me, they took my order, brought my food, and off I went. I kind of expected a bit more from the serving teams, just with how few people there were in the dining rooms. I mean, the night that I was at Jamie's, they literally had 40 people in there all night, in their 4 hours of operation. And so, there were only, I think, 3 other tables when I was in there. And I just expected a bit more of an elevated service, especially when you aren't having to shuffle between 5 or 6 tables. It wasn't there. The food was perfectly fine. But, when you look at service that you get at Disney and you look at Palo, I haven't been to Enchante or, Remy's, but like even those fine dining experiences, I mean, the food's amazing. And then the service on top of that, you layer that on top of it is just, I mean, it really is unparalleled. I have not, now having been on Royal Caribbean and Norwegian, I have not seen a level of service in a dining room that you get like you do on a Disney ship.
Is Jamie's a reference to Jamie Oliver?
Yes.
Okay, so they like hired a celebrity chef to curate their menu.
Yes.
Okay. I feel like, again, that's like, I've heard that a lot about Royal and Norwegian, but Norwegian I can vouch for. Do the upcharge dining.
Yeah,
just like count it into the cost of your cruise that you're not going to be eating in the main dining room and you're going to have like good specialty dining meals would be my vibe. Did they, I almost said, did they have a buffet? Of course they did. It's called Windjammer, or what's it called?
The Windjammer Buffet. I think this is really where they shine in terms of, especially when you're comparing it to Disney, like the amount of options that are available at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I had breakfast and lunch multiple times in there. I walked through after dinner because 2 of the specialty restaurants are actually essentially almost connected to where you go for the buffet. And so I walked kind of through at dinner just to see what offerings they have. I mean, Christy would love it. The fact that they have an entire, and it's different than Cabanas. They have sort of that kind of horseshoe, with all the different serving stations, but then they have these like islands as well that have a bunch more options. And they had an entire gluten-free island with appetizers and entrees and desserts. And I mean, Christy would just live on that little island the entire cruise. But I mean, the food was fantastic. It was hot. There was, the variety that was available, not just your normal American food that you would typically get, but international flavors. I mean, the amount of Indian food and Asian inspired food that they had. And I mean, they know their market. They know the people that are coming on their ships. I saw a lot of people gravitating towards those specific islands where they were either gluten-free or they wanted something that was, different than your kind of traditional American buffet. I mean, I 5 out of 5, like that buffet was like awesome.
One of my favorite things they have on their buffet too is like a nacho bar at lunch, basically, where they have like fajita meat and they have salsa and guacamole and they have like hot cheese sauce, like ridiculously fake cheese, but it's in a big vat and it's hot and it's so delicious. And chips, like, sometimes that's just nice on a sea day to have. Or after you get back from a port excursion and their buffet is open way later and they have like a whole cheese section. Yeah, Disney could take a few lessons about.
Yeah, the one thing they didn't have, I think that Disney excels in, is their pool area food. I mean, obviously on the Wish, that's probably the gold standard. The Magic and Wonder, you've got, kind of Daisy Delights, you've got the pizza. So on the pool deck itself, there is Johnny Rockets, which is your upcharge. You're going to pay $10 for your burger and fries and a milkshake. They also have El Loco Fresh. So all the Mexican food is out there. So they've got the quesadillas, the tacos, and the burritos. They have the salsa bar where you can add any types of salsa, the guacamole, cheese, lettuce, tomato on top of that. All fresh. They also have, like Christy was saying, the nacho bar where you can pour the hot cheese and just get a bowl of chips and put meat and cheese on that. And so that was great. I think the only bummer is if you just want like a hot dog or a hamburger, French fries, you have to walk from the pool deck inside the Windjammer buffet while you're in. And I saw people at lunch, they would just kind of pop in there, no shirt on. They're in there, they got their swim trunks, which I was kind of shocked they let them walk in there. People would be grabbing burgers and hot dogs and French fries, and then they would take them back out to the pool area. So that's like the only miss, I think, on this particular ship is the pool deck offerings for food were mostly, if you didn't want Mexican or pay up for a Johnny Rockets, you had to actually go into the buffet to get all of your typical stuff that you would find out on the pool deck on a Disney cruise.
I think we've talked so much about food. I'm obviously curious about entertainment. Did you go to any shows or anything like that? It sounds like maybe you went to the royal version of Match Your Mate, but what about any of their main stage productions?
Yeah, so I tried to really do as much as possible on this cruise, from trivias, stage shows, all the different kind of nightly entertainment activities that they have, just to get that true, what is it like to go on a Royal Caribbean cruise, and is it fun? Would I want to do this again? The one thing that I think the overarching comment, and I've talked with a lot of people who have been sailing on Royal Caribbean recently and also have sailed maybe on Disney recently, the programming is so much more on these ships. There is so much more to do than I think Disney currently is activating during the daytime, which is great because you have families and a lot of multi-generational families are on these cruises, and you need to provide a lot of stuff for people to do. So yeah, the shows, they had nightly entertainment. They have a giant theater, kind of their main stage theater. They had kind of a welcome aboard kind of mixtape type of show where they brought in a couple dancers. They had the band playing. There was a horrible comedian. Like, I left about 5 minutes into the comedian because he was not funny. It wasn't the greatest first night, but perfectly fine. That first night also, they had the ice skating show, which, by the way, the fact that you can go like watch an ice skating show with like Olympic level people doing like triple axles and flips and whatnot on a cruise ship, kind of mind blowing. And not to spoil it, but I'll spoil it. The fact that they have drones that fly all over the ice while some of these things are happening, like wildly like inventive in terms of, storytelling and just creating a super different show for people to go and experience. So night one, a huge high on the ice skating. The main stage show was bad. They had one of your typical kind of variety acts that did, comedy, magic, a little singing, all of that. Perfectly fine. The thing I liked overall about all of these shows is they're only about 35 or 40 minutes. So, it's not the hour and 15 where you're sitting there like, I'm going to fall asleep. This is boring. Like, it's just enough to keep you interested. And then you're off doing the next thing. They had two main stage shows. One was called Ballroom Fever, which essentially was, they have like an ensemble group of dancers, 12 or 14 people. They had two people as like guest dancers on our cruise that were from the Ukraine, which was really cool to see. They were absolutely, you can tell they were like a level above even kind of the regular main stage dancers. And they kind of did through the ages of Latin, tango, jive, waltz, like all different types of dancing to lots of different music. Perfectly fine. It's not Tangled. It's not Beauty and the Beast or Frozen. I get it. But for a 35-minute show, perfectly entertaining in between dinner to go see. And then they had their main show. It's a brand new show called Showgirls. The show that I saw was their 100th performance of the show. So it's sort of that new to the ship. Basically take pop culture songs and have a giant LED screen in the back of the theater on stage and have set pieces moving in and out and people jumping and dancing and doing choreographed stuff with a lot of Greatest Showman thrown in there. That was kind of a running theme that kind of went through the entire. That was probably my favorite show outside of the ice skating. But overall, just it's a good, simple 35, 40-minute activity to go and do from an entertainment standpoint. They had not only a sail away party when we left Los Angeles, they also did a second sail away party when we left Ensenada, which was kind of weird up on deck. They're just, jamming to the music and everyone's out there having fun dancing. So this ship has essentially, it's called the Royal Promenade. So imagine if you took the Disney ship and directly down the center where you have like all the kids club programming, you have a 3-story like atrium enclosed area where a bunch of the bars and restaurants are. And you actually have staterooms that look into this area. They had a couple parties. So they had a 70s dance party and an 80s dance party. Super fun. The cruise staff lead that. They did a great job of quick 30-minute shows, but it's, all these popular songs from those decades.
Did you dress up?
I did not dress up. I didn't know that I shouldn't say I didn't know that. One thing about Royal Caribbean, very different than Disney, and Disney could probably take a note of this, is on the app I think it was 3 days before we left, all of the programming showed up on the app. So you had an idea of day by day, hour by hour, all of the activities, everything that was going on. And then you could still request a cruise compass, which is their version of a paper navigator. You could still request one if you wanted a paper one, but they had a digital copy of it every day that you would just download on your phone, which was like magical and fantastic that you could look at it in that sort of grid format to see everything that was going on the ship. So did I know that there was like a formal night for dining and a 70s party and 80s party? There was a white party, like all these different parties. Yes. Did I bring anything to dress up? No. Perfectly fine watching and hanging out and just seeing all the other families get into it. So,
did you participate in trivia?
I did trivia. I did they have. You probably experienced it, Chrissy, maybe on your cruises. They have like a very wide variety of trivia, like general knowledge, guess the famous person, like Harry Potter, Friends, Where in the World, Disney music, all sorts of trivia. I will say, your viewers cannot, or your listeners cannot see this, but this is my medal that I won. Oh. I actually won 2 trivias.
By yourself?
Not by myself. I met some friends and we did the trivias, but I have my little medal here, my Royal Caribbean Championship medal. I won a general knowledge trivia and a guess the celebrity trivia. So that was super fun. They also have a lot of the kind of family kind of activities. So there were scavenger hunts. They had like a Family Feud game show. There was a silent disco. This is Royal Caribbean, so they have a belly flop contest at lunchtime on the pool deck, which was very entertaining to watch. They had their version of Match Your Mate, which is their love and marriage game show. Then they had just things like a paper plane contest where you made a paper plane and you threw it down the Royal Promenade to see who could throw their plane the furthest. So like you had kids and families being able to do these things together, which was super fun. They have a very infamous thing on the last night of the cruise called Crazy Quest. I don't know if you've heard of that or participated in that. It is a adults only game show, 18, and they make sure it is 18 only because it gets very adult. But like just a super fun way to end the cruise with all these people that you've made. They use the ice skating rink, and it's a great use of space. And I think to the kind of Hero Zone that they have on the Wish, they have this ice skating rink where they use it not only for ice skating shows, but you can sign up to go ice skating during the day as well. They transform it into a laser tag arena, but then they do a bunch of these adult activities in there as well, because it's essentially, like a little theater in the round setup. And so being able to have these multi-use spaces, I think, Disney could, learn a lot from the way that Royal programs some of these spaces throughout the day to be able to, allow families and adults to be able to do different things, different programming from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
And it's not just the D Lounge.
And it's not just the D Lounge. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They have their lounges that they do stuff in, but then they have these kind of big multi-purpose spaces. One thing that I did pay for, which I thought was a very good use of money, I love escape rooms. They have an escape room on this ship. Royal has, I think, like 4 or 5 versions of these escape rooms on different ships. I think it was $35. You're put in a group of anywhere from 6 to 12 people. We had 7 in the group that I was in. And you're in there. They've got their kind of crew member that kind of gives you some basic instructions and an introduction. And then you've got an hour, I think it was an hour or 50 minutes to break out of the room and solve all the puzzles. Super fun if families, if kids, if people like to do that sort of thing. I thought it was a really unique activity. It's a fairly small contained space up on literally the 15th deck of the ship. It's the only thing on that deck, but I thought it was a really good use of space that I believe used to be like a wedding venue where they used to do weddings, and they've transformed it into a small little escape room that they, there were 5 or 6 times throughout the day that you could do. So another thing that I would love to see on a Disney ship, even if you had to pay for it, I think a super fun family, and there were a couple younger kids with us, and then then the rest of us were adults. And everyone gets into it because there are many, many, many things that you're going to have to do to solve that.
Did you get out? Did you escape?
We did. We had actually the best. I did it on the last sea day. We had the best time of the cruise. We escaped, I think, with 13 or 14 minutes left over. So we did a very, very good. It was, this is not easy. It is not like you're going to walk in and solve it in 20 minutes. It took everyone in the room doing different things and discovering things. You can obviously ask for help or hints if you get stuck on it. I think they probably would like you to solve it, in an hour, so you feel some sort of accomplishment. But yeah, we did get out, and I was very excited about that. They also have bingo on the ship. I did not play. I love playing bingo. They use only paper cards, which is kind of crazy to think like I've got to hold all these paper cards in my seat in a theater and try to play bingo. I don't know why they don't have electronic devices on maybe this particular cruise. Maybe other Royal ships have the electronic games, but we could only play on paper cards. And so I decided not to do that. And then they also have a casino, which obviously is very different. Disney's probably one of the only cruise lines that does not have casinos on their ship. I thought it was fun. It's when it gets crowded, it gets very smoky in there. And so spending any amount of time in there can just, if you're sensitive to smoke and just don't want your clothes to smell like that, not the best place to hang out. But it was nice that it was pretty self-contained. You didn't smell smoke throughout the ship, which was good. And I went in there and gambled a little bit and had fun, won a little money. So hopefully they'll send me a discounted or free cruise at some point in the future.
Spent a lot of money then.
Well, I mean, I won some money, so we'll see if they'll want to take it back.
Nice.
Yeah, Disney gets a lot of bonus real estate compared to the other cruise lines, because cruise lines will typically give prime location to a casino, like, you know, half a deck or something like that, depending.
Yeah, this was a pretty small casino, but it was on one of their main floors right near the Royal Promenade. So if you were going to the theater or to some of the bars, you were going to kind of traipse through that thing unless you went up a deck or whatnot.
I did go into the casino on our celebrity cruise because they gave you free play. So we used the free play. You can't, I think the machines know when it's free play and they will not let you win any money off of that. But it is like free entertainment for 10 minutes or something. So we did that. And
they're smoke free on celebrity.
Yeah, no, it was not smoky. That is true. I wouldn't have gone at all. If it was smoky, I wouldn't have gone because I do have bad allergies related to cigarettes. But the ice skating thing is wild. Also, I know that international parks have dabbled with drones, but I'm just waiting for a drone show to hit the US theme parks. There's a finale drone show. It's like dark arts or something. Dark arts at Hogwarts Castle. Yeah. They have a drone finale that's like so freaking cool, even though it only lasts for like 30 seconds. And so I'm like, Universal, they're never going to pay the fees that they have to pay the neighbors up there to do fireworks shows regularly. It's just too much. So they save fireworks basically for like very limited special events for Universal Studios Hollywood. But they could do a drone show. And I feel like they should. I feel like
they dabbled with it, right? Like they did something at Disney Springs. Maybe it was still downtown Disney.
Yeah, holiday show. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, but it's never been like a permanent feature of any of the US parks, right? Like it's not.
I'm gonna blame the lawyers.
Yep.
Well, you definitely can't have people walking under them. Like you have to find without nets. So Universal's solution is to put nets over the tram unload area because the drones technically fly above that area. So Disney would have to find that space, I guess. But
I was in Epcot today and their new fireworks show starts in like a month and a half. And they have a new, less bulky and obnoxious barge something. Yeah. It's like almost like a ramp, like two ramps going into each other now in the center of the lake. But they could do a drone
over the
water there.
They could, as long as they were okay losing them, like letting them fall into the lake. Yeah. But this has nothing to do with cruising, except it kind of does because Royal Caribbean flies little drones inside of a theater.
They don't have fireworks at sea like Disney, but the ice skating with the drones is pretty darn cool. One thing I do want to talk, if you're a family, like the ship itself on the pool deck area, like really, really well programmed for families and activities. They have an adults only solarium that has 2 huge hot tubs, a bar, and then a pool essentially similar to like the adult pool on the Magic and the Wonder. So that was great. When I was on the ship, it was actually 16 and over. And then I think literally the week after I got off the ship, they raised it to 18. I didn't see any kids in there or any 16 or 17-year-olds. When I was there, I was pretty crowded with mostly adults. They have 2 main pools in their pool deck. And like Christy said earlier, a little kids water play area, which is super fun with a little slide and lots of the buckets that dump water on you. And that's sort of in the center of the ship. And then in the very back of the ship is really kind of where a lot of the active kind of programming is. So they have the flow rider, which you can do boogie boarding and stand-up surfing. I tried. Not the best surfer because I'm not the best snowboarder, but I will tell you it was super fun to watch kids attempt to do it. And when they succeeded, and you have all these people kind of sitting there watching and everyone's clapping and cheering them on, like a really, really cool experience to watch that happen. They have the 2 water slides. They have a mat slide that you essentially lay down on your stomach and you slide through. And then they have, that's a single person slide. And then they have the aqua coaster, which is a 1 or 2 person slide that kind of propels you up and down different ramps. Super fun. I think I went on that 40 or 50 times, like I said. And then they also have their sports court in the back. And the thing I really liked about that was they had their open play times where you could play basketball and kids, but they also, like in the morning, they had pickleball. So you could sign up and play pickleball from 8 to 10 and just go there and play with random people that are on the ship. But then they also had like an adult volleyball and an adult basketball, and they had adult dodgeball. And so that was really fun to go play with other adults on the ship, because you're just like, yeah, I want to go play dodgeball, or I want to go play like volleyball with just a bunch of people. And so getting to do that and having those organized activities, I thought was really, really smart of them. For, I just had more stuff for like adults that are, obviously if they didn't have kids or families and not having to keep track of people, more stuff for people to do on this ship, and just a really good kind of smart. It would be interesting to see Disney program that sports court area like that, to give adults maybe something to do in the late afternoon, like a dodgeball or a volleyball, just be something fun to do like that. They also had a mini golf course, which was super fun. That was in the very front of the ship. So, there was just so much to do on the ship. They had crammed so many activities on it. Absolutely fantastic.
And I presume they have like this little tiny jungle gym that was out there on deck that I know they had on the Independence, and I believe their sister ships. So basically set up the same. And the one thing about the solarium is if the weather is bad, they will actually set aside like an hour or two. It's like from 3 to 5 or something, where they will open it up to children. But it's only if the weather is bad. So they will do it if it's just been like a really cold cruise, or if it's just been a lot of raining and things like that. So I do like that the option exists, but it's mostly for adults only, but that they'll set a designated time if they need to like have more places available for the kids.
Yeah, and it reminds me, I went and checked out the kids club. They have something called Adventure Ocean Kids Club. They have sort of 3 areas. They have your babies and tots area, which you pay, I think it was $6 an hour. And so it was interesting just to talk with how the programming works for kids. They have a 3 to 5. They're kind of aquanauts area, and then they have the 6 to 11, which is their like explorers and voyagers, and that's really it. And they were, I think unlike Disney, where I don't know, probably opens at 6 a.m. and stays open till 1 or 2 in the morning. This actually had defined opening and closing times throughout the day, so it'd be open from like 9 to 12, and then they'd close, and then be open from like 2 to 5, and then they'd close, and then they'd be open from like 7 to 10, and then. If you were, if you had kids and you wanted to leave them in after 10 o'clock, you actually then had to start paying $10 an hour for 3 more hours before at 1 o'clock, you eventually then had to go pick up your kids, because they had a ship-wide curfew for all children under the age of 18 that they had to be in, back in their staterooms. They did have I'll say like a teen hangout area called the living room, which is sort of indoor-outdoor space. It was actually, the outdoor space was pretty amazing. It was on the back of the ship. They had these couches and loungers that overlooked the aft of the ship, and then inside had gaming stations. And so they had periodic programming. I walked in there just to see. They had periodic, more nightly programming that was going on. So, while the parents were either at dinner or seeing a show, they had stuff to do from like 7 to midnight, but mostly during the day, most teenagers were out running around doing stuff on the ship.
Which I feel like is mostly what they do at Disney anyway. Even though they have that space, I think most of them is still like running around doing whatever. But
yep.
What was your favorite sort of part? Clearly not the bed of the cruise.
I think the favorite part was just the amount of activities on the pool deck that was available to me. Like when I'm on a Disney cruise ship, the adult area is great. They may have some music playing. You're kind of vibing, just chilling. maybe in and out of the pool. The water, maybe you hop onto one of the water slides. Usually there's only kind of one thrilling water slide, if you want to call it, but there's usually a long line. I think just the fact that there was so many different things I could do on the pool deck. I could be in the solarium and then come back and jump on the flow rider, could go down the water slide 5 times, and then put on some shoes and go run and play dodgeball. Like the fact that it was just all there, I think that was probably my favorite thing, because I don't want to just sit with a book and read for 8 hours out in the sun or in the shade. As fun as that is, I want to be a bit more active running around doing things on the ship. And so I think the multitude of offerings that they had, I think really, really, that was probably my favorite part, which is why I'm super excited to, eventually get on an Oasis class. But Icon of the Seas looks like mind-numbingly crazy in terms of just the number of water slides and activities and things that you can do up on that ship. I didn't even go rock climbing, but they have a rock wall that you can go rock climbing on. And so I'm just super excited about that. But that was probably my favorite part of that ship. And I think most Royal Caribbean ships have similar programming once you get to that middle and kind of large ships, not obviously the smaller ships that they have, which is kind of very different than Disney. Disney has a lot of that same programming on all of their ships. And so that was great that they just had so much to do.
I'm really tired listening to your recap. Like, I'm very impressed and very tired.
I was like, I got to the end on night 4 and I was just like, did I relax at all? And I was like, I wasn't looking for a relaxing, I wanted to do, I had so much fun, and it actually was very relaxing doing all of that. And just, when you're by yourself, it's make your own plan, wake up when you want to wake up, eat when you want to eat, do what you want to do. And I just thoroughly enjoyed that. As much activity as I did on this ship and do all the things that I went to, it still was a fun, relaxing, which is a weird term to use, still a really fun, relaxing cruise to go on.
That's awesome. Well, I definitely want you to come back after the Icon. I'm curious how that cabin category works out. That's what we have. Well, I guess have booked. We have to move that cruise still, because for the cruise that I've booked on the Icon, but definitely want to have you back. I want to hear all about it. And
I'm very excited to try that room, because it doesn't have a traditional balcony, which I think I'm going to hate. But the fact of the room being almost 120 square feet larger than the room that I was just in, and it has the split bathroom like Disney has, and just so much more space, I think I'm going to like it a lot more than especially this one.
But that's in the suite class category as well, right? That room?
No, it's in there. It's in their standard balcony. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not even, it's actually larger than their entry level junior suites, which is kind of crazy. You can sleep up to 6 people in the room, in the 2 bunk beds, in the king bed, and then on the sofa bed. So, I mean, it's a great option. Finally, there are rooms on cruise ships, and there's a lot of them. I think there's 80 or 90 of these rooms on that ship that can hold large families. And they did the smart thing and did the split bathroom.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, definitely want you to come back to talk about that. I hope you will, especially because you're going on the inaugural. So we'll get you right back on and get that out so that we can all hear about it and see what it's like. I'm curious and nervous a little bit about how many people are on there.
7,000 of my closest friends. It'll be a lot of
fun. Oh my gosh. Well, this sounds like a joy. I'm so jealous about your Icon Maiden. I cannot wait to hear every single detail of it. So we're going to do a reunion of this crew. Is it January when they sail?
End of January, yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. The biggest ship. Okay. And you have to tell me all about the water acrobats and all the things. So can't wait for that. But
yeah, they had kuka arms on that ship. How crazy is that?
Yeah, they're just doing the most out here. So I feel like we got to hear about all of that. So yeah, that's going to be the next time we see you. But in the meantime, do you have anything else fun coming up besides that Icon of the Seas cruise? Any other vacation vibes?
I would love to take a vacation somehow in between Icon and where we are right now. We'll see how the work schedule plays out, but it would be really fun to get back on either a Royal Caribbean or a Disney cruise before that comes up. Yeah, no plans. I'm not like going to Hawaii or anything super fun like that.
Well, I can't wait. I hope that you have such a good time on Icon. Thanks for sharing all of this with us so far. It seems like it's been an absolute joy and a half to get to cruise solo. I've honestly wanted to try it maybe one day. I'm like, I probably couldn't commit to more than a 4-day, but Seth just did a 4 or 5 day solo cruise and lived his like literal best life. So maybe one day it might be nice just to like clear out, do my own thing. So thanks for the inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everyone. Well, have a good rest of your night. And thanks for listening to the DCL podcast.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Chris for coming on and sharing his experiences as he sailed off the west coast of Best Coast on Royal Caribbean's Navigator of the Seas. Just an amazing ship. And we are looking forward to hearing his and yours and Christy's view of the Icon of the Seas. If you have not seen that ship, go online, check it out, Google it, Icon of the Seas. It's going to be the largest cruise ship in the world, and it is just pretty amazing looking, so I can't wait to hear all about that ship and people's experiences on it. As always, we'd like to give a huge shout out to our Patreon supporters. They help bring the show to you each and every week ad-free. If you'd like to find out how you can support this show, you can go over to patreon.com/DCLpodcast and find out all the information there. Also, we'd like to give a huge shout out to each and every one of you who've taken time recently to leave us a review where you listen to your podcast, or whether it's on Apple Podcasts or elsewhere. That helps us get the show known a little bit better in the cruising, the Disney cruising, and just the Disney podcasting community in general. Thank you for each and every one of you who've taken the time to do that. Well, Halloween is just about upon us. If you are headed down to the parks, headed out on a Halloween on the High Seas Disney cruise, if you're getting ready for an Adventures by Disney, or if you're getting ready for that wine and dine weekend, as Lake, Steve from Tampa, and Christy are getting ready to do, and Katie as well. On behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, Lake, and Nova, we want to wish you to be well, enjoy your time with family and friends, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
The DCL Podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.